Devil worship in France, or the question of Lucifer, a record of things seen and heard in the secret societies according to the evidence of initiates. Chapter 4. Ex ora Leonis. For over 10 years past, Leotaxil, and that is to say, M. Gabriel Jogand Pagus Pages? Is that how you pronounce it instead? That has been the great accuser of Masonry, and he possesses an indistinct reputation in England as a man whose hostility is formidable, having strong points in his brief during the entire period of his impeachment, which is represented by many volumes. He has uniformly sought to identify the fraternity with the general purposes of Lucifer. Yes, because enlightenment is a horrible thing. But until the year 1891, it was merely along the broad and general lines mentioned in the last chapter. Now, in presence of such attributions, as for example the satanic character of tolerance in matters of religion, I, for one, would unconditionally lay down my pen, as there is no common ground upon which a discussion could take place. From the vague imputation Leotaxil passed, however, to an exceedingly definite charge, and is beyond all dispute that by his work entitled, Are There Women in Freemasonry? He has created the question of Lucifer and its connection with the Palladian order. He is the original source of information as to the existence of that association. No one had heard of it previously, and it is therefore of the first importance that we should know something of the discoverer himself, and everything as to the particulars of his discovery, including the date thereof. Previously to the year 1891, Leotaxil knew nothing of the reformed Palladium. He is the one anti-Masonic writer named in the last chapter as preceding Paul Rawson, with information about Albert Pike. This was in the year 1885, and in a work entitled The Brethren of the 3 Points, which began complete revelations concerning Freemasonry, undertaken by this witness. Like Paul Rawson, he represents Pike merely as a high dignitary of the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite, but he does so under the incorrect title of Sovereign Commander Grand Master of the Supreme Council of the United States. He states further that the Grand Orient of France, as also the Supreme Council of the Scottish Rite of France, send their correspondence to the Grand Master of Washington. I conceive that no importance, as indeed no definite meaning, can be attached to this statement beyond the general and not very significant fact that there was some kind of communication between the 3 centers in the year 1888 of the Vulgar Era. Pike was so little in harmonious relation with the French Grand Orient that by the depositions of latter witnesses, he placed it under the ban of his formal excommunication in virtue of his sovereign pontificate. For the rest of the Brethren of the 3 Points contains no information concerning the new and reformed Palladium, and this is proof positive that it was unknown at the time to the writer, for it would have been valuable in view of his purpose. The same observation applies to a second work published shortly thereafter. The cultus of the Grand Architect had Leotaxil been acquainted with the worship of Lucifer, subsisting in Palladian masonry, Palladian masonry. He could have failed to make use of it. He could not have failed to make use of it in his volume so entitled. The work in question is concerned, however, with the Selamites, which obtain in Masonic temples, with names and addresses of all French lodges, so that it is a directory as much as a revelation, with the political organization of the Corboneri, with the judge philosophers, and with the certain official documents of Masonry. But it may occur to those of my readers who are acquainted at first hand with the revelations of Leotaxil that his knowledge was held over in view of a plan of publication, and that the Palladium would be disclosed in due course when he came to treat of androgyne, or adoptive masonry. Let us pass, therefore, to his next work, entitled Sister Masons, or Ladies' Freemasonry, which appeared in 1888, and in which we certainly meet with diabolism, and also with Palladianism, but not in connection with Albert Pike, or the Charleston Grand Directory. The reference in the first case is to practices which are alleged to obtain in the Egyptian rite of adoption, called the rite of Caligstro, and in the second, to the order of the Palladium, as it was originally instituted in the year 1730. At the same time, the information given is of serious importance, because it enables us to gauge the writer's method and credibility in the one case, and in his knowledge at the present in the other. Once more, in the year 1886, Leotaxil did not know of the Palladium as a reformed or revised institution. Had he known, he could not have failed to tell us. Now, Diana Vaughan and the question of modern Palladism is not, it wasn't published until, relatively recently. So therefore, I'm not going to share the sequel to this book. But isn't Leotaxil or something like that? There's a very Thomas Vaughan or Leotaxil or someone is the there's a compilation of writings done by A.E.Waite. I have not been able to trace all the sources of his information concerning the older Palladian rite, but it comes chiefly from Ragon. He divides it into two systems: the Order of the Seven Sages, which was for men only, and appears as a banal invention, with a ritual mainly derived from the travels of Anacharsis. The travels of Anacharsis. I don't know whether it's Greek or Latin, whether it's they're trying to say, but the Order of the Palladium, composed of two masculine grades and one feminine grade, respectively Adelphos, and the companion of Ulysses for men, and the companion of Penelope for women. It pretends to have been founded by Fenelon, but at the same time claims to be an antiquity previous to the birth of the great Archbishop of Cambrai. Leotaxil accuses it of gallantry, but the flirtations described in the ritual impress an impartial reader as a species of childish theatricals, a criticism practically exhausting the entire motive of the order, which, as I have already stated, lapsed into obscurity, and, so far as can be traced, into desuetude. Okay. Through our witnesses, uniformly refers to it in the present tense, as if it were an active operation. However this may be, the description and summary of the ritual given by Leo Taxil place it outside the possibility of a connection with Templar Masonry, and also with the Baphomet Palladium, in spite of what is alleged to the contrary. Accepting the worst construction which is placed on its intention, it could have offered no point of contact with the alleged project of Albert Pike. So far, therefore, the information contained in Les Seurs Machones conflicts with the history of the new and reformed Palladium, as given in my second chapter. It has been said, however, that Leo Taxil charges another Masonic order with the Endergene type with satanic practices. He divides the Egyptian rite of adoption into 3 grades. In that of apprentice, the discourse represents Adonai as the genius of pride. Remember, the tetragrammaton-wise, in the more ancient, you have the wow in there too. So it's not really a tetragrammaton anymore; it's a pentagrammaton. But read your Bible. That's one of the terms for God. The discourse represents Adonai as the genius of pride, the serpent tempter of Genesis as the eternal principle of goodness, and that of the companion, and the symbolism of the ritual enforces the necessity of rehabilitating the character of the mystic serpent. Oh, well, see, it has to be reinterpreted. But if you see Adonai in terms of some so-called pagan god, and it has to be reinterpreted, that's something different. In that of the Egyptian mistress, there is pretended evocation of planetary spirits by means of clairvoyant. And Leo Taxil affirms, on his own authority, that the supreme being referred to in the discourse at initiation is Satan. According to the doctrine of the sect, the divinity is formed of 2 opposite principles, the genius of being, who is Lucifer, and the genius of destruction, who is Adonai. This is so obviously the doctrine of the Luciferian Palladians that it's difficult to understand why the institution of Charleston is not connected as to purpose, if not as to origin, with the Egyptian adoptive rite of Mizraimite Masonry. See, the Christians have tried, in their Trinity, have kicked off the negative and kicked off the female, but to the very point where they say that Satan is the god of this world and age. And if you have that, and the entities that act on behalf of the heroes of this world and this age, yeah, it sounds super satanic, but open your Bible. I created darkness and light, or light and darkness, however, those sorts of things going on. Man and all they do, giving us choices, not. At this point, however, it becomes my duty to state that there are some very curious facts in connection with the catechism of the officiating mistress, which is the source of information for the alleged Manichaean character of the 3rd degree. The more considerable and essential portion of that document, so far from being referable to the supposed founder of the rite, namely Count Caligstro, is a series of mutilated passages taken from Eliphas Levi's Dogma et Rituel de la Haute Magie, and placed clumsily together, and that is to say, Leo Taxil, while claiming to make public for the first time an instruction forming an essential part of a rite belonging to the last century, presents to us in that instruction the original philosophical reflection of a writer in the year 1856 of the Common Era. And moreover, he distorts palpably the fundamental principle of that writer who so far from establishing dualism and antagonism in God, exhibits most clearly the essential oneness in connection with the threefold manifestation of the divine principle. I conceive that there is only one construction to be placed upon this fact, and although it is severe upon the documents, it cannot be said that it is unjust. When therefore Leo Taxil terminates his study of the Egyptian rite by divulging some essentially diabolical practices of the Mizraim lodges, namely, the evocations of the elementary spirits, we shall not be surprised to find the ritual of the proceedings is taken boldly from the same author who has been previously taxed for contributions. The reader need only compare the Slurs Machon page. There's an S at the end, but I think we're not supposed to say that. Page 223 to 330, with the conjuration of the four, and the fourth chapter, the ritual de la Haute Magie. It will be objected that this conjuration is derived by Levi himself from a source which he does not name, and as a fact part of it is found in Comte de Gabali. Quite so, but my point is that it has come to the taxil documents through Eliphas Levi. The proof is that part of the exoterisms are given in Latin and part in French by the author of the ritual for arbitrary and unassignable reasons, and that les soreurs machane reproduces them in the same way. It is evident, therefore, that we must receive Leo Taxil's divulgations with severe caution. I may add that the proceedings of the Holy Inquisition in the trial of Count Caligostro were published at Rome by the order of Apostolic Chamber, and they include some particulars concerning the Egyptian rite, which Caligostro was the author, and particulars in part corresponding with the documents of the sister Masons, but offer the significant variations even along the lines of correspondence. Now, they're not only are they interacting developmental stages and processes of things that were and are to come. Think of it as, you can look at the Enochian keys in the same way. It's not necessarily that you're evoking, that you're worshiping the angels and the spirits and stuff. You're representing the communication and the action between them. And this is made very clear in the case when you have this in the Quran, is that when you read the Quran, you're not praying to the prophet when it says, "Oh, prophet." You're not praying to such and such when you hear the words called out. That address one versus the other, and you see the people talking hell, and I've even seen people say, "Oh, well, Pharaoh said that people should be crucified, so the Quran's ordering people to be crucified." It's like, no, Pharaoh is the bad guy. But, I feel like I needed to make a comment because some people are going to possibly stir up some issues that don't exist. Having established, in any case, that Leo Taxil knew nothing of the Reformed Palladium in the year 1886, we may pass over his next work, which reproduces a considerable though select proportion of some of his previous volumes, because precisely the same observation applies to the mysteries of Freemasonry, and we may come at once to the year 1891. Sometime subsequently to the 3rd of August, our witness published a volume entitled Are There Women in Freemasonry, which, so far as one can see, bears the marks of a hurried production. It is, in fact, the sister Masons, almost in extenso, that work being still in circulation. With the addition of important fresh material, the bulk of new matter is concerned with the rituals of the new and reformed Palladium, consisting of 5 degrees, confirmable as regards the first degree, as for the first 3, with somewhat banal but innocent grades of the modern rite of adoption, and passing as regards to the 2 final into pure Luciferian doctrine. How did Leo Taxil become possessed of these rituals? He informs us quite frankly that by means of arguments, sonnets, et tribacants, that is to say, by a bribe, he persuaded an officer of a certain Palladian Grand Council, located at Paris, to forget his pledges for the time required in transcribing them. That was not a very creditable proceeding, but in exposing Freemasonry ordinary ethical considerations seem to be ruled out of court, and it is idle to examine methods when we are in need of documents. By these documents, and by editorial matter, which indicates and follows them, Leo Taxil, as already observed, created the question of Lucifer, premising that a dual object governed the institution of undergene lodges, namely the opportunity for forbidden enjoyments and the creation of powerful, unexpected auxiliaries for political purposes. He states that the latter part of this program was specifically surrendered to the old Palladian Masonry. Now it is clear that the rituals of this order, which he published in 1886, bear no such construction as here, and for the first time imputates they connect with part 1 of the program, and he was content at the time with their impeachment on the grounds of sexual disorder. Why has he changed the impeachment? No assignable reason appears from his subsequent remarks, but as he goes on to allege that under the auspices of Albert Pike and his group, the original order developed the new and reformed Palladian rite, in which the political purpose was itself subordinated to Satanism pure and simple. Now, not seeing problems with the establishment of Christendom doesn't mean opposing Christianity, as outside the Freemason Lodge of the video that I had permission to walk around and do a video, he said it's a shame that some people don't want to be recognized as Freemasons when they go to church. It's like, oh, I recognize you from church. Don't tell anybody that I'm a Mason. It's like, well, that used to be a common thing, but certainly some values that may or may not be exemplified by the United States and others. They're a group of people that they want to improve society. And sometimes that doesn't mean that they want to establish a church state. The Illuminati were the same way, but that does not mean Satanism pure and simple. Maybe they were even more devout Christians for realizing the flaws that have occurred in such states. Originating in the United States, it has invaded Europe, where it propagates with truly unheard of rapidity, so that in Paris alone there are 3 active lodges, that of the Lotus, found in 1881 and situated in the Faubourg Saint-Germain, which has in turn created the lodges of St. James, 1884, and of St. Julian, 1889. The Lotus itself was preceded by the organization of some Areopagites of the Kadosh grade of the French Rite, and of the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite, who practice theurgy under the direction of Ragon and Eliphas Levi, both of whom are represented as given over body and soul to all the practices of lawless diabolism, the latter being apparently the leader after whose death an association met only infrequently, until it was revealed by Phileas Walder, the friend, as we have already seen, of Albert Pike, and he who imported the new and reformed Palladium from America into France, and, assembling the disciples of Levi, founded the Mother Lodge of the Lotus. Now, see, their own personal beliefs, when you go through and enact these principles, your own personal beliefs and practices are going to be connected to them. The ritual obtained. Oh, and before I, go on and attempt, see if I can finish this, maybe not. We run into something else here. The Freemasons, like other men's orders, and if they had a women's order division, the women's order division, the separation of the genders was something that the modern era has kind of said, okay, let's have, particularly since we're not bowing and all that anymore. The men and the women are all together. People sit with their families and all that. And let's be honest, not necessarily that alone. There's not the focus in the churches and stuff anymore. And society is so mixed that we're trying to pretend that the genders don't exist and all that. But having a different, do men go off in the woods? They must be homosexual. It's like, no. Or they go in their secret club and who knows what they do there. It's not a gay bathhouse. Thank you very much. And some areas, just like, when you have a more devout Christian population, the men, because particularly since it's a secret organization, you may go there and change into your regalia and costumes, or however you're going to phrase that sort of stuff. Some people may get dressed in complete privacy. And if they don't, well, that's a cultural thing. So it depends on the lodges, how it's going to go. If you have a lodge dominated by a Muslim or Jewish population, you're probably going to have people get dressed separately. And depending on the Christian population, that too. So you may have different, stalls where people get dressed. It's, but some it's wide open, like a Greek, but, people are going to assume things that aren't the case. Like they presume all athletes must be homo because they get dressed in front of each other. And it's like, well, not all athletes do that. And again, it's context, people. The ritual obtained by Leo Taxil was printed in Latin and in English, with an interleaved French version and manuscript. As presented by its discoverer, there is no doubt that it is an execrable production, involving the practice in open lodge of obscenity, diabolism, and sacrilege, passing over the first three grades and beginning at the point of bifurcation. We find it stated in the ritual of the fourth degree of elect that the new and reformed Palladium has been instituted to impart a new force to the traditions of high-grade masonry, that the Palladium, which gives its name to the order, was presented to the fathers of the order by Eblis himself. Iblis, Satan, the one despaired of hope, hope of God's approval, or, however you define that. And that Charleston is the first supreme council of the globe, and thus it will be seen that the Palladian ritual confuses the Palladium order with the ancient and accepted Scottish rite. For the rest, the legend of the fourth degree is the first part of what is deemed as a blasphemous life of Jesus, representing Baal Zebaub, actually probably more proper, Baal Zebub. See my demonology and cosmology of the pentagram rite to have a greater understanding of that. As his ancestor, Joseph as his father, according to physical generation, and Mirzam as his mother, who was highly honored as the parent of many other children. Adonai is the principle of evil, and Iblis, otherwise Lucifer. The Quran does not treat Iblis as Lucifer, the good god, but the ritual of the fourth grade is innocent in its character, which compared with the abominations of the fifth degree of the Templar mistress. The central point of the ceremony is the resurrection of Lazarus, which is symbolically accomplished by the postulant suffering what is termed the ordeal of pastos, that is to say, by means of public fornication. The purpose of this ordeal is to show that the sacred act of physical generation is the key to the mystery of being. The life of Jesus, begun in the previous grade, is complete in the present. It will be sufficient for my purpose to indicate it represents the Savior of Christianity who originally began well, passing over from the service of the good god Lucifer and making a pact with the evil Adonai, in sign which he ceased indiscriminate commerce with women who followed him and pledged himself to live in chastity, for which he was abandoned by Baal-Zebub, Zebub, what? Oh, Baal-Zebub, Baal-Zebub, yeah. And is cursed by Pilatus. I'm trying to figure out that, because the OU and Ouija, okay, we're not saying Ouija. The duty of a Templar mistress is to excrete Jesus, anathemize Adonai, and adore Lucifer. The rite concludes by the recipient spitting on a consecrated host, and the whole assembly piercing it in turn with stilettos. Yeah, that seems made up. But there are, there are symbolic things that people bring up poetically that are kind of. So far as the sole testimony, the actual operation, as indeed to the existence of those infamous ceremonies, is leotaxil, and is once more my duty to state that the documents are in no sense above the suspicion of having been fraudulently produced by someone. It seems scarcely credible, but the instruction of the elect grade incorporates Masonic reference to literatum from the scandalous memoirs of Casanova, and that is a fact which sets open a wide door to skepticism.